Hello, I'm going to try to explain a little bit about indexing in Eclipse, and hopefully it won't be too long. If you look here on the screen, I've got my front page on here with all of my information. It's not filled out, it's just the form front page. But if you notice something here, where I want to put the index for me is at the end of all the front page stuff and then before the examination. And so I have my index lines in here the way I want them to come up if I were to run the index. I want the exams to come up at a certain place. I want the index of things like recess taking, etc., to come up at a certain place. And then I want the exhibits to come up after that. And if there's any requests, I've got an index line for that. And anywhere in the transcript that I need a request for the witness to produce something or whatever, I would put the index for the request in there, and it would put that index line in there. But basically what this is this is telling Eclipse, hey Eclipse, when you run the index, when I tell you to run it, this is how I want you to pull things out of the index, and in this particular order. So let's go down here and let's look at a few things I've got on here. I've got a index line here that is ahead of itself. I'm going to put a page break in here so that this is on a line by itself so that we're good to go, just so I'll be a little bit clearer. So I've got things here. Say I want to make an index line for an exhibit. So I've got exhibit 2. I've got my description. Now if you look on here, here is XDEP exhibits. And down here is XDEP exams. Now if you remember, if you look up here, I've got XDEP exams here, and I've got XDEP exhibits. So by putting these things in here with this particular line, Eclipse knows to grab that and put it where I've told it to in the index. So basically that is how you sort your index, so to speak, and tell it how you want things to come up once you run the index. You want to be very specific. You might be able to get away with having everything the same name. I don't suggest that because it could be confusing. Because basically if you did that, you would just run the index and everything would come up as it happened. You could have Exhibit 1 marked recess taken, Exhibit 2 marked discussion off the record, Exhibit 3 marked, Exhibit 4 marked, Exhibit 5 marked discussion off the record, Exhibit 6, 7, and 8 marked recess taken, and there wouldn't be any really formality to it. And I like to keep kind of things in order. And if you notice out here, after I've got the description of the exhibit, there's another paragraph format, which is what this section here does. And this is where you tell Eclipse you make an XDEP exhibit paragraph format, and you want the things in that particular index line to be at a certain place in the transcript, and I will show that to you here in just a second. But this basically tells Eclipse how you want the margins to be for the exhibits 1 through whatever, and how they show up. Down here, if you notice, I've got XDEP exhibit for my exhibits, but down here for exams, I have a different paragraph format called XDEP exam. And then as we go through here, you can see I've got other exhibits put in here just as examples, and I've got the description to kind of give you an idea of what it should look like. And so as I run this index, I want to put my cursor at this point right here, and I want to tell it to run index. Build index, index the current document, yes. Now at this point, it's gone through here and it has run the index. And you can see not everything has been filled out correctly, so you know that that's something that's wrong. That gives you a clue right there when you see this stuff here. It's missing some information. You can see everything else looks pretty good so far. Notice of depot, photograph of car. I'm going to cancel this for a second and reject it. I'm going to go back and notice that I need to fill in some information right here about the witness. So let's go up here and let's do a fill in the blank. Joe Smith Depot September 1, 2015. Mr. Jones was the taking. And so now it's filled out some information here for us. And let's go back and see if that makes a difference on the index. Build it again. And there we go. We have some information filled out there correctly. Now I'm going to go ahead and accept this index and let it put it in right there. And now I'm going to look at it and see if everything looks okay. And it looks okay to me because, of course, I've got it set up correctly. And you wonder, now where did this come from? How did that get in there? Well, because I'm using XDEP exhibits as a index line, I actually made a block file called XDEP exhibits. And if you look down here, you'll see it's ready here to be opened up. So I'm going to click on that block file called XDEP exhibits, and you can see I've got it set up and I've got the spacing the way I want it to look. So let's go back here to the index again on the test file, and here is everything the way it should look. Now if I needed it to look a little bit different, I could go in here and say I want to move this over. I can move it over, but when I do that, you see that I've got this moving over here, so I may not want to do that, but you can do that if you need to, and you can move files around as necessary, move the lines around. What I would suggest you do is, if you do that, make a note of how you did it, and then go back to your XDEP exhibit file and you can adjust it there accordingly. If you move the description over 2 spaces to the left, make sure that you go back to the page and move it 2 spaces to the right, because once again, if you move it here 1, 2, you've moved the page over also. So 1, 2, I'm going to move it back. Now I've got a blank line here because I want to have a blank space between anything above my deposition exhibits and the things above that. So back here on the test file, you can see here we've got some index lines and we've got some paragraph lines on the left hand side of the page. Now there's a couple of things you can do here. You can click on the format, paragraph format, and you can see here it has some options here to maybe change the label or whatever. You can go to label, you can go here and you can actually see that it's got that one highlighted for the exhibit 1. You can actually change label, and you could go in there and you could call it exhibit 10 or whatever. It says it's on page 5 because we see it says page 5, but if it should have been page 6, you could change that. The problem with that is you have to manually change every exhibit line in the transcript, and it might be better just to rerun the exhibit once you've seen that something caused it to mess up the page numbers or you inadvertently put the wrong number in. But here is the way that you can change everything up. And this TR1 is tab stop right 1, and I'll show you where that can be found. If you look over here in the transcript, I've got at the margins up here, you've got a header, a ruler up here that I've got where it shows under the ruler, and I've got a little tick right there for a tab stop. Now if I wanted to, with the mouse, I could just go up here and I could just drag it somewhere else. And what happens is it just moved the 5 over. It left the other tab stop up there. That's okay, but now it's kind of messed up. But if it should have been over further to the right, I can click that little tick mark and I want to put it back where it was on top of the other one, and it's not going to mess up anything. Now I can also move things like my margin here for the lines of this. You can also go in here after it's been put together. You can put in things like, whoops, let's go back up here again to that. You can put in things here like to be produced by the witness, and if you forgot to put that in, you can put that in there and it will adjust accordingly. Now what may happen is you may lose the page number and it might get messed up and push things down to where something would be on a new page. So be careful with that, but be aware that you could add something to it if you needed to on the description, and you could modify it a little bit. But again, like I said, be careful. If you don't like where this is right here, you could actually move it over to the right by going up here and clicking on the ruler again and moving things around. And you can add, and I see I clicked a tab stop there by accident and I messed it up. Now I've got the number 5 in there that's messed up. That would be a clue to you that perhaps things have gotten messed up or out of whack. You could go up here and grab this tab stop again and move it back over to where it should have been and put the 5 back where it needs to be. Certain things in here you can move around and certain things that you can't, but you want to be careful as you try to realign things with your ruler that you don't get things too much out of whack to where it's not going to work for you and then everything is really screwed up. But this is a way you can move some margins around with your header and your other margins up here in this ruler bar. Keep in mind that this ruler bar is only affecting this paragraph line because this is where the cursor is. If I were to go up to some other place, you might see different tab stops jump in and everything else would jump in and mess things up. Now if your index is more extensive, like say a court index, you may have a whole lot more cover lines in here or index lines that are going to be set a certain way. And again, you'll have to look at those to see how your paragraph format is set up when you run, for instance, an index line that may have more detail in it, like for court. And like again here on this one, I've got court chrono, I've got court jury and stuff like that. I'm going to look down here at court chrono and see that I've got a block file that just is a page break because I want the court chrono to be a new page and then start my index there. Court alpha, you can see here, is a block file I made for alphabetical index of witnesses. So in my cover court, you can see I've got court alpha as an index line, and then I've got a block file called court alpha. And so when it runs the index, it has everything set up correctly, and the paragraphs and the paragraph format for the court alpha format puts the cross and the direct and everything else in the right line in the right column for me because I've told it this is where I want it to go. So this is kind of a quick overview of an index line and how to do them quickly. I hope this kind of makes sense. You can see here again on my indexes for exhibits, as a quick review, I've got XDEP exhibits, and then I've got XDEP exhibit paragraph format, so that this is kind of telling Eclipse if it does an index, look for these. And then this is the format, the paragraph formatting, how you want the exhibit to look on the line in the index. And then different here is XDEP exams and XDEP exam format, so that when I run the index again, I get these to line up correctly with where I want the page number to show up and the witness name and everything else. So it's a quick review. I hope it makes sense, and with that I will stop for now. Thanks.